I know card making supplies are expensive, so when you buy a stamp or die, you want to know that you can use it in a few different ways. So I'm starting a new YouTube series, One Stamp, Two Ways. Hi everyone, I'm Rebecca Keppel. In today's first video of the new YouTube series, One Stamp, Two Ways, I will be featuring the new Gina K Designs More Fun Fruit stamp set and coordinating dies. So first, let me show you how cute this stamp set is. This is the new Gina K Designs More Fun Fruit stamp set, and the dies you can see I've placed on top of the stamps that they match with. So all of the fruits have dies to cut them out, which is so nice because then you can pop them up and get dimension under them. And there's a ton of really adorable punny sentiments like "You're simply the zest, squeeze the day," and more. Now it's time to use the stamp set in two different ways. So I thought one really fun way to use this stamp set would be to try some no-line coloring. I'm going to start with Gina K Designs Amalgam ink in Whisper, and I'm going to lightly stamp up 3 of the fruit images. You can see it's a very light gray outline. For those of you who are not familiar with no-line coloring, I'm also stamping the pineapple image in Amalgam black ink. It's Obsidian, so we can look at the difference between the two at the end. For this type of no-line coloring, I like to have a nice bullet tip on one end of the markers, and Ohuhu markers have a set that have that, because then I can outline over that light gray so that I have an outline to work with when I'm coloring it in. Make sure to turn your paper, not contort your wrist, right? So turn the paper so that you can get a nice angle and closely and slowly outline the image. I started with a yellow that I thought was going to be a little bit lighter, and it was a little bit darker. So usually I start with my lightest color first. This time we're just going to roll with it and start with the darker color first. And then I'm going to take the lighter color and blend out those harsh lines. I'm leaving the center of the lemon open from coloring until the very end, so that will remain the lightest part of that fruit, and it will be a nice highlight. I decided to add a little bit more of the darker yellow at both ends of the lemon, just to add a little bit more shading and blending. These fruits are large enough to do that, no problem. And then I use the lightest color to finally blend out all of that and fill in that center area, which will now be the highlight. It'll be the lightest yellow of all of the lemon. And when you're going around a round shape, it's great if you can actually do a curved line like I'm doing on the outsides of the lemon, and I'll do it on the orange as well. That gives it a rounder look than a straight look with those straight brush strokes. Now for the lemon, I actually added some more lines than were in the stamp set. This is something you can do with no line coloring, because I thought that it looked like the inside of an orange to have those different colored lines. For the lime, I pretty much just stuck to the image itself. Same thing with the lemon, I just did the shading on both ends. So you can see there, those are the 3 fruits that are no line colored. I always add a little bit of white gel pen details, and I'll link to my favorite white gel pen down in the YouTube description box below the video. It always stays active where I can use it right away without having to prime it. For the regular stamped image to color it in, I have that black outline. Now, I definitely waited the whole time while I was doing the no-line coloring to let that black ink fully dry. I am using an alcohol-safe cardstock that is ultra smooth so that the alcohol ink will move around and blend together. You can see for the pineapple, I am just coloring in each of the squares individually and then going around just the inside of those black images. If you still get smearing, try not to swash over, is swash a word? Try not to go and brush over the black images too much. Try to stay inside those lines. Even though it may seem like a pain to color in each of those little squares, it will save you some of that bleeding that can happen every once in a while with ink and alcohol markers. For the leaves, I decided to start at the base of the leaves for the darkest part and leave the tips white so that those will be the lightest parts. And I went in with my lightest color first and then used my darker color. You don't always have to use 3 colors of alcohol ink. You can definitely get that shading and blending just by using 2. So once I have the darker areas colored in, I go in and fill in those tops with that light color, and you can see there is a gradient of color going from dark to light. Again, even on the stamped and colored images, I like to add the white gel pen details. They're just a really nice touch that adds a little something extra, a little bit of interest. I used all the dies with some washi tape to hold them in place, and you can see the difference between the regular stamped image and the no line coloring on the right. For another way to use this stamp set, you can use heat embossing with either resist or on colorful cardstock. So let's start with resist. We're going to stamp the peaches several times on some white cardstock. I'm stamping it with Versamark ink, which is an embossing ink. It stays tacky for a long time so that you can pour that embossing powder on top and it will stick really well. So I'm pouring white embossing powder on top. It will be hard to see in camera, but you're able to see in person that I have about 5 peaches and it's white on white. I'm going to do the same exact thing with 2 of the pears, white on white, so that when it heat sets, I will be able to use that as a resist. For this set of fruits, which is going to be the apples, I decided to heat emboss on colorful cardstock. Gina K has a really great red. I'll link to all of her cardstocks that I used down in the YouTube description box below the video. Those were not sent to me. I just love Gina K's cardstocks and the colors, so they are just some of my favorites. And I did still pour the white embossing powder on top, but this time you'll obviously be able to see it. It's a really bright white against that really beautiful red in the background. So I'll heat set that so that that embossing powder melts and sticks to that red cardstock. Then you can take some pencils. I like to use Prismacolors or some other type of very easily blendable pencils and color in the little leaves. The great thing about pencils on top of even dark colors of cardstock like this red is that they still show up and they show a good color. So I also decided to use some pencils to add some blending and shading. Since we didn't do any no line coloring or anything fancy here, I wanted to add a little something special to these apples as well. So a little bit of red and then a little bit of pink in a kind of arc shape to create a shine mark on those apples. For the peaches, I decided to use Gina K's Coral Reef ink and a domed foam blender, and I'll just blend in a circular motion, but I'm leaving the center pretty much untouched at first. We'll go over it, but it's kind of the same concept as leaving part of the stamped image white and filling it in last so that it remains the whitest or lightest part of the image, which will be your highlight or your little shine mark. So again, go back in and cover it up a little bit, but let it stay a little bit white so that there is a little bit of highlight to those peaches. Again, I'll use some pencils for the leaves on these little peaches. Started with a light green, like a yellowy green, and really wanted to add some actual green to it, so it went darker. For the 2 pears, I'm going to use the same technique of ink blending, and I'm using Gina K Designs Applemint ink. It's a really pretty light green that I thought would be perfect for a couple of pears that are just so cute. Again, that circular ink blending motion to color them in. So I know that ended up being a few more than just 2 ways, but I want to take all of those now and make them into cards. For the pears, I did realize that I hadn't done anything to the leaves, so a little dark green pencil just on those leaves. I love how the embossing ink keeps you in those lines. It's really nice and handy to have when you're trying to color things in. And I also forgot to add white gel pen details, so a little bit of those on both of the lighter parts. I'm using the sentiment, "We make a great pair," and I've cut down that white panel to 4 by 5 1/4 so I could mount it on some Applemint Gina K cardstock. Another thing that is so great about their cardstocks is that they match the inks, and I love that. That is just so handy to have because then you get this really cute coordinated effect on an otherwise very simple card. As you'll remember for the peaches, I used Gina K Designs Coral Reef ink. I grabbed a piece of the Coral Reef cardstock as well. I am stamping and heat embossing a sentiment that says, "Hope your day is just peachy." I decided this sentiment will be in gold. Again, cut that panel down to 4 by 5 1/4, and now I will pop up all of the peaches on a foam square. I keep the foam squares either towards the center or towards one side so that I can easily layer them on top of each other. So I have 3 pairs at the bottom. You can see some are on top, some are on the bottom, and it just makes it really easy to tuck those in, but also continue to have that really great dimension that pops them off the card. And they're so cute with their little shine marks in the center. For the apples, I did want to add one more bit to those shine marks on the side of the apples, so I added a little smaller shine mark with white gel pen. Always saves the day. I'm telling you, I love this white gel pen and I love using it on stamped or heat embossed images, no matter what. The sentiment says, "You're the apple of my eye." This time I cut down a piece of green cardstock to 4 by 5 1/4, so that white cardstock is 1/4 of an inch smaller on both sides so that I could mat 2 different colors on top of the red background. And the red is the same red cardstock that I used for the apples. So love that little hint of green that will be called out in the leaves of the apples. Just helps everything tie together really nicely. And again, those Spellbinders square foam, they are great for popping up elements like this. For the no line coloring, I don't have inks to match, but I grabbed cardstocks that I thought really did kind of match the colors that I ended up using for those fruits. So again, I have 2 mats this time so that I could have green and an orange in the background. Squeeze the day is the sentiment on the white cardstock. And then I have these 3 fruits. So you can see when I lay down that lime slice, I didn't press down hard because I had a feeling I wasn't gonna like how it looked. And I wanted it behind the lemon, but in front of the orange. So if you're like me, just definitely don't squeeze down the first time you place it down and you'll have a second to move it around. For the pineapple, I decided to add some last minute blending and shading with a darker green pencil. It was sitting out on my desk still from one of the previous cards, and I thought just a little bit more at the base of those leaves to add a little bit more interest, a little bit more blending, and a little bit more shading. And this is something that is really great to do is after your alcohol ink markers or whatever markers you're using have dried, to add a little hint of pencil coloring. It really helps to accent those images. This time I have a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 piece of white cardstock. The sentiment says, "You're so pine," and then I will use some of that foam squares again to pop up that pineapple, just because it's such a clean and simple card that I definitely wanted a little bit of dimension, but I love how it came out. I hope you can see that this stamp set can be used and colored in or just created with cards a number of different ways, whether you're using regular stamping coloring, no line coloring, embossing heat resist, or embossing on cardstock. There are tons of ways to create these fruits that are super cute. I absolutely love summery fun fruit stamp sets like this one from Gina K Designs. Let me know in the comments below if you want to see me add more videos to this new playlist, one stamp set, 2 ways. For another fun, fruity, summery look, be sure to check out the last video I filmed with Gina K's last month's release. As always, I want to thank you so much for stopping by and spending time with me today. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you again soon.